The galaxy had long enjoyed the Pax Zeneca, a fragile but enduring peace maintained by the luminary Concord, a coalition of ancient, technologically advanced, and fundamentally peaceful species. These were beings of profound intellect and spiritual development, but physically frail. The Sylvani, a species of sentient plant-like organisms, communicated through photosynthetic light patterns and built intricate bioluminescent cities. Their strength lay in genetic manipulation and ecological harmony, but they withered under direct physical assault. The chronoscribes, ethereal beings of pure information, could manipulate local time fields and possessed unparalleled data processing capabilities. They predicted futures and guided development, but were utterly defenseless against physical force, existing almost entirely as consciousness within their crystalline repositories. The harmonious chorus, a species that lived as a vast, interconnected network of sound and vibration, built magnificent sonic structures and could terraform planets with resonant frequencies. Their entire defense was based on confusing and disorienting invaders, but a direct physical attack shattered their delicate neural nets. These races had outlawed conventional warfare millennia ago, relying on their advanced defenses and diplomatic weight. They lived in an era of sublime intellect and artistic expression, where brute force was a forgotten barbarism. Then came the V'shir Hegemony, a nomadic, warrior empire of colossal, chitinous beings. They swept through the outer rim like a plague. Their technology was primitive compared to the Concords, but their sheer physical might, their ruthless tactical doctrine, and their biological imperviousness to many forms of energy weaponry made them unstoppable. They did not conquer for resources. They conquered for the sheer act of domination, seeing the frail, intelligent races as mere chattel. Planets fell in days. The luminary Concord's advanced defenses, designed for stealth and misdirection, were bypassed by the V'shir's blunt, overwhelming force. The Sylvani withered, the chronoscribes scattered, the harmonious chorus shattered into discordant cries. Billions were enslaved, their knowledge plundered, their civilizations crushed underfoot. In desperation, the luminary Concord reached out to a newly discovered species on the fringes of the galaxy: humanity. They were a relatively young species recently emerged from a tumultuous history of internal conflict, yet possessing a strange, aggressive resilience. They had arrived in the galaxy only a century ago, a chaotic explosion of unpredictable variables. Their envoy, a gruff but empathetic combat veteran named Colonel Anya Petrova, stood before the terrified, shimmering forms of the Concord. "You want us to fight your war?" she asked, her voice raspy from decades of command. "Against a species that shrugs off your energy weapons and marches through your stealth fields?" A Sylvani elder, its bioluminescence dimmed with despair, projected a thought directly into Anya's mind. "We require a shield, a species willing to stand, to bleed, to endure what we cannot. Your history indicates a capacity for such barbarism." Anya frowned. "Barbarism? We call it protecting our own, or in this case, protecting you. But understand, we're not super soldiers, we're just stubborn." The elder projected another thought. "Your biology, your aggression, your capacity for pain, these are alien to us. These are what we now require." Anya nodded slowly. "All right, but you're going to see how ugly humanity can be when it's pushed. And you're going to see how beautiful we can be when we stand between a monster and something defenseless, Colonel." Anya Petrova was given command of the Human Expeditionary Force SHIELD Division. Her mission was unprecedented: use human ground troops to physically defend the fragile populations of the luminary Concord from the V'shir Hegemony. The Concord provided advanced logistical support, strategic data, and transport, but the actual fighting was entirely on human shoulders. Their first deployment was on the Sylvani garden world of Viridia. The V'shir, a species of colossal six-limbed arthropods, were systematically harvesting the Sylvani for their biochemical properties. The Sylvani, rooted and slow-moving, could only offer passive resistance through confusing light patterns, which the V'shir simply ignored. Anya deployed her veteran infantry units. These were not super soldiers, but men and women hardened by decades of internal human conflicts, trained in every conceivable combat environment. Their armor was heavy, their weapons ballistic and kinetic, brute force solutions designed to penetrate the V'shir's thick chitin. The first engagement was a massacre. The V'shir were larger, stronger, and seemingly impervious to anything but a sustained barrage of heavy fire. But humanity had one advantage: tenacity. "Hold the line, don't break," Anya's voice crackled over the comms, even as V'shir warriors. Their chitinous claws, tearing through cover, closed in on her forward platoons. A human corporal, pinned down behind a crumbling bioshelter, screamed as a V'shir claw ripped through his leg. He didn't retreat. He propped himself up, emptying his auto rifle into the monster's face until it fell. Other humans, seeing his unwavering stance, rallied. The Sylvani, observing through their remote sensory networks, were bewildered. They saw their defenders take grievous wounds, suffer excruciating pain, yet refuse to yield. They saw humans sacrificing themselves to protect immobile Sylvani saplings. "Why do they not retreat when severely damaged?" projected a Sylvani elder's thought form into Anya's tactical display. "Their combat efficiency drops precipitously. It is illogical." "Because we don't think about efficiency when something innocent is behind us," Anya replied, watching her troops push back a V'shir surge. "We think about the line, and if we break, they die. That's our logic." For the first time in the war, a V'shir advance was halted. They hadn't been defeated, but they had been stopped. A small section of Viridia had been saved. The V'shir, their brutal efficiency having never encountered such stubborn resistance, withdrew to regroup. News of the unbreakable line spread through the Concord. A fragile hope, a concept long dormant, began to stir. The first victory on Viridia was hard-won, costly, but undeniable. Colonel Anya Petrova's human soldiers had proven that the V'shir could bleed, and more importantly, they could be stalled. The luminary Concord, seeing humanity's unique capacity for physical endurance and protective aggression, began to integrate them more deeply into their defensive strategies. Humanity didn't have the Concord's advanced anti-gravity technology, nor their matter synthesizers, but they had an unparalleled understanding of defensive fortifications, born from millennia of trench warfare and siegecraft. They used the environment, scrap materials, and sheer manual labor to build barricades, trenches, and strongpoints that the V'shir, accustomed to overwhelming easy targets, found infuriatingly difficult to breach. On the next besieged world, the crystalline moon of Kronos Prime, humanity was tasked with protecting a vast chronoscribe data repository. These ethereal beings, existing as pure information within intricate crystal lattices, were the memory of the Concord. Anya's forces, using salvaged starship plating and local mineral deposits, constructed a labyrinthine network of defensive walls and firing positions around the repository. The chronoscribes, their consciousnesses a vast interwoven network, projected tactical data directly into human combat helmets, predicted V'shir assault vectors, optimal choke points, and even subtle shifts in local time fields to slow the day. V'shir advance. Heavy V'shir units approaching Sector Delta 4, crackled a chronoscribe's voice in Anya's ear, devoid of emotion but laced with urgent data. Probable breach in 4.7 standard minutes. Suggest concentrated fire zone. "Got it, scribe," Anya replied, her gaze fixed on the holographic map. "Sergeant Rex, lay down suppressive fire on Delta 4. Corporal Lee, prep the plasma charges. Let's give these overgrown bugs a warm welcome." The V'shir, with their primitive but effective tactics, smashed against the human barricades. They were powerful, but they lacked the strategic depth to counter a determined, dug-in defense. They attacked in predictable waves, and humanity, guided by the chronoscribe's temporal foresight, met them with overwhelming force. Human soldiers, despite their physical inferiority, inflicted heavy casualties. Their compact size allowed them to utilize tight spaces and narrow corridors, turning the V'shir's bulk against them. Their weapons, simple kinetic slug throwers and plasma flamers, tore through the V'shir's armor, exploiting weak points that the Concord's elegant energy weapons had merely glanced off. The chronoscribes were fascinated. They predicted outcomes, but they had never witnessed such raw, visceral resilience. They saw human soldiers, wounded and exhausted, pulling themselves back into position, their will unbreakable. Your capacity for enduring setback. It is outside our predictive models, a chronoscribe projected. The probability of your retreat is 87.3%. Yet you persist. Anya, wiping blood from her brow after repelling a direct V'shir assault, simply grunted. Probability doesn't understand stubbornness, scribe. And we humans, we're the champions of stubborn. For the first time, the V'shir Hegemony found their advance bogged down. Their momentum was broken. Humanity was not just stopping them, they were slowly bleeding them dry. The success on Kronos Prime, though costly, solidified humanity's role. Colonel Anya Petrova's SHIELD division was no longer merely a desperate gamble. It was the backbone of the Concord's defense. The V'shir Hegemony, though still overwhelming, was no longer invincible. The next target was a world of the harmonious chorus, a species that existed as pure resonant vibration, their city's vast, intricate sonic sculptures. The V'shir, with their heavy footfalls and disruptive energy emissions, were literally deafening the chorus, causing widespread neurological damage and shattering their collective consciousness. This battlefield was different. Direct combat would risk immense collateral damage to the delicate sonic structures that comprised the chorus's very being. Anya's strategy here was less about direct engagement and more about surgical defense and auditory counterinsurgency. Her troops wore specialized environmental suits that filtered out harmful frequencies and amplified essential ones. The harmonious chorus, through subtle harmonic projections, guided human patrols through the intricate sonic cities, highlighting V'shir infiltration points and vulnerable structural nodes. The V'shir, their communication based on rhythmic, chitin clicks and subsonic rumbles, were disrupted by human counter-frequencies, blasts of white noise, and carefully targeted sonic pulses provided by the chorus that turned their own attacks against them. During one particularly brutal engagement, a human fire team found themselves trapped, surrounded by a V'shir patrol, their weapons low on ammunition. The harmonious chorus, observing their impending demise, projected a mournful, disorienting dirge, hoping to confuse the V'shir and give the humans a chance to escape. Instead, the human corporal, a young woman named Jensen, did something utterly unexpected. She didn't retreat. She found a damaged power conduit, stripped its wires, and began to rhythmically tap it against her armored helmet, creating a harsh, defiant beat. Then, in a surprisingly clear voice over her comms, she began to sing, a simple ancient human combat chant, off-key and raw, but filled with an unwavering resolve. Her team, understanding, joined in. The V'shir, their primitive minds baffled, hesitated. The chorus, their collective consciousness filtering the human song, registered a new powerful emotional frequency, courage, unquantifiable. It was chaotic, loud, discordant, yet utterly inspiring. It was the sound of defiance in the face of annihilation. The chorus, in a desperate collective act, amplified the human song, weaving it into their own sonic defenses. The V'shir recoiled, not from damage, but from the sheer alien force of the human will, amplified by the chorus. The humans, emboldened, found an opening and fought their way out. Your song, it was a weapon, projected a harmonious chorus elder, its usual harmonious patterns now subtly altered, imbued with a new, stronger resonance. We have never encountered such auditory resilience. Anya, listening to the report, smiled. That's just us, chorus. We sing in the dark, always have. The V'shir, their communication and morale unexpectedly shattered by the human song of defiance, began to experience the first signs of internal discord. Humanity was not just fighting them, they were subtly unraveling their rigid, aggressive hierarchy. Colonel Anya Petrova, her face now etched with the grim resolve of protracted warfare, knew that the Shield Division could not win this war alone. They were a shield, not a sword. They could bleed the V'shir, stall their advances, and protect the innocent, but they could not defeat the hegemony entirely. The luminary Concord, however, was undergoing a subtle but profound transformation. Witnessing humanity's unwavering will, their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, their capacity for empathy and self-sacrifice had awakened something dormant within them. The Silvani, inspired by human perseverance, began to adapt. Their genetic manipulation skills to produce rapidly growing, heavily armored defensive flora, sentient mobile barriers that could absorb V'shir attacks. The chronoscribes, using their temporal foresight, began to not just predict V'shir moves, but to subtly manipulate causality, creating tiny, localized temporal paradoxes that disoriented V'shir commanders. The harmonious chorus, having embraced the discordant courage of humanity, began to develop sonic weapons that targeted the V'shir's specific neurological weaknesses. Humanity had shown them that survival was not always about elegant solutions, but about messy, brutal, stubborn resistance. They had given the Concord something they had lost, the will to fight back. Anya's next deployment was to the V'shir homeworld, a desolate, volcanic planet that served as the hegemony's central command. This was not a defensive mission. This was a surgical strike, designed to cripple the V'shir leadership and shatter their command structure. The Concord's combined forces executed a daring deep strike. Luminary lightships provided stealth and energy shielding. Chronoscribes opened temporary temporal windows for rapid deployment. Harmonious chorus ships disrupted V'shir comms and defenses. But the final assault, the infiltration of the central command bunker, still fell to humanity. Anya, leading a small elite squad, entered the heart of the V'shir hegemony. They fought through swarms of V'shir warriors, their heavy armor shredded, their weapons pushed to their limits. Anya, her own body aching with exhaustion and fresh wounds, found herself face to face with the V'shir overlord, a colossal ancient arthropod whose chitin was scarred with 1,000 battles. The overlord roared, its multifaceted eyes fixed on Anya. You, the fragile ones, you bleed, you break. Why do you persist? Anya, battered but defiant, raised her plasma rifle. Because we don't break, we bend, we adapt, we learn. And when we have something worth protecting, Overlord, we stand, she fired, emptying her clip into its primary brainstem. The Overlord fell, its death cry echoing through the cavernous bunker. The human squad, against impossible odds, had decapitated the V'shir hegemony. The fall of the V'shir overlord sent shockwaves through the hegemony. Their rigid, hierarchical command structure, dependent on absolute obedience, collapsed. The individual V'shir clans, without a central authority, devolved into infighting. The war, which had seemed endless, rapidly drew to a close. Colonel Anya Petrova became a galactic hero. Her Shield Division, once a desperate gambit, was now revered as the savior of the luminary Concord. Humanity, once an unpredictable curiosity, was now seen as an indispensable ally. The luminary Concord did not revert to its old ways. The war and humanity's example had changed them. The Sylvani, chronoscribes, and harmonious chorus now understood that peace did not mean an absence of conflict, but the will to defend it. They began to develop their own defensive militaries, incorporating lessons learned from humanity's tenacity. Humanity, however, did not become the galaxy's sole warrior caste. Their role evolved. They became the trainers of resilience, teaching the younger generations of the Concord how to build defenses, how to adapt tactics, and most importantly, how to find their own inner strength. The galaxy entered a new era, not just the Pax Zeneca, but the Pax Humanica Zeneca, a peace maintained not just by diplomatic weight, but by a shared understanding that true strength lay in the diversity of its members and the collective will to defend what was precious. Years passed. Colonel Anya Petrova, her face now deeply lined with age and wisdom, remained a symbol of human endurance. She was known as the First Shield, the one who had taught a galaxy how to fight for its peace. Her command post, once a grim war room, was now the Academy of Cooperative Defense, where human instructors taught alien species the art of resilience. The galaxy was a different place. While threats still arose, the pervasive fear of total annihilation had lessened. The Concord, now a truly unified force, defended itself with a blend of elegant technology and human-inspired grit. The ultimate lesson of humanity's journey was not about being the strongest, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced. It was about our unique capacity for protective aggression, for enduring unimaginable hardship, and for our unwavering will to stand between a monster and something defenseless. We were the species that could take a bullet for someone else, not out of blind obedience, but out of a fierce, illogical, and utterly human sense of duty. Anya, in her final address to the newly formed Galactic Defense Council, spoke not of weapons, but of courage. "The universe is a dangerous place," she stated, her voice resonating with the quiet authority of one who had literally taught a galaxy how to defend itself. "But it is also a place of immense beauty, of fragile life, and of profound knowledge. And if we, the diverse peoples of this galaxy, stand together, if we each find our own strength, and if we are willing to be a shield for each other, then no darkness, no empire, no threat can ever truly conquer us." The Shield Division, once a desperate human military unit, was now a galactic philosophy, a badge of honor for any species willing to stand against tyranny. They were the unsung heroes who ensured that the galaxy, despite its dangers, remained a place where peace was protected, where the weak could find strength, and where even the most frail could find the courage to stand, thanks to the unwavering resolve of humanity, the shield of the weak.